Imagine this. What happens when the architect of a city's future, a woman who moves markets with a whisper, encounters the one force her influence cannot bend? I am that architect. My name is etched onto the cornerstones of skyscrapers that pierce the clouds. My fortune built on the unwavering principle that everything and everyone has a price. I sculpted my empire from concrete and steel, from leverage and calculated risk, believing I had mastered the equation of human desire. But I never calculated for him. For the man who ran a rooftop farm on the one block I needed to complete my legacy, a man whose wealth was measured in sunlight and soil, not stock options. Before we continue, tell us where in the world you are watching from. Drop it in the comments below. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful content like this. Now let me take you to the penthouse suites and the urban gardens where ambition meets its match, where the heart stages a hostile takeover of the mind. The city was a circuit board beneath my feet, a complex network of power and capital that I knew how to manipulate better than anyone. From the 75th floor of my headquarters, the world looked orderly, quantifiable. I am Julianne Vance, and at 43, I don't just participate in the market, I am the market. They call me the Queen of Chrome, a moniker earned through a decade of ruthless acquisitions that reshaped the city's core. They say I can see the future of a neighborhood a decade before anyone else, that my touch turns forgotten warehouses into billion-dollar ventures. They are not wrong. My strategy is simple. Identify the future, acquire the present, and eliminate any obstacle. Sentiment is a liability. History is a teardown. My latest project was my masterpiece, a sprawling tech campus designed to be the new heart of the city's innovation sector. It required a full 4-block consolidation. I had acquired every property, every business, every residential holdout except one. A rooftop farm atop a crumbling pre-war building run by a man named Elias Thorne. My reports described him as an idealist, a community organizer who sold his produce at a local market and donated direct. An insignificant gnat in the face of my bulldozer. That Wednesday morning was supposed to be the final step. I stepped out of my armored Maybach, my stiletto heels a sharp counterpoint to the cracked pavement of the industrial street. The building was an eyesore, a relic of a forgotten era. I checked the time on my Patek Philippe. This shouldn't take more than 15 minutes, but then I saw him. He was standing on the fire escape, tending to a vine of what looked like tomatoes, silhouette against the rising sun. He was 35 maybe, with the lean build of someone who works with their hands, wearing a simple t-shirt that had seen better days. He had a stillness about him, a rootedness that was utterly alien to my world of constant motion. "Mr. Thorne," I called up, my voice crisp, the same voice that had silenced boardrooms. "I've been expecting you." I smiled my practiced, disarming smile, the one that preceded a checkmate. "Miss Vance, I hope you've prepared your people for the transition. Breaking ground next month." "Actually," he said, descending the metal stairs with a startling grace, "we're not going anywhere." I almost laughed, but something in his voice was different. It wasn't posture. It was a statement of fact, a quiet certainty that made my well-rehearsed confidence falter for a microsecond. "Everyone has a price, Mr. Thorne," I said, the words a mantra that had built my empire. "Sure?" He looked at me, his eyes the color of rich earth after a rain, and there was no animosity in them, only a kind of curious pity. "You really believe that, don't you? That everything can be sold?" "In my experience, yes." Elias shook his head slowly. "Then you've never met someone who doesn't need what you're offering." For the first time in my career, I was speechless. Stood there, Julianne Vance, the woman who owned the sky, rendered mute by a farmer who probably made less in a year than I did in a minute. He gestured towards the rooftop above us. Like to see what you're planning to destroy? I should have said no. I should have walked away, called my legal team, and initiated the eminent domain proceedings that were already prepared. Instead, I heard my own voice say, 5 minutes. The rooftop was a shock. It wasn't just a garden, it was an ecosystem, a vibrant splash of life against the gray backdrop of the city I had built. Rows of vegetables I couldn't name, beehives humming with activity, a small greenhouse cobbled together from salvaged windows. It was chaotic, inefficient, and breathtakingly beautiful. This is where the kids from the shelter down the street learn about where food comes from, Elias said, pointing to a series of brightly painted planters. This is where Mrs. Santiago gets the herbs for her restaurant. She's been here 40 years. This is where we grow the produce for the community kitchen that feeds 60 people every night. I watched the bees dance between flowers, a complex system operating on principles I didn't understand. These weren't line items on a balance sheet, they were alive. It's admirable, I said, my voice sounding hollow even to me. Surely a more suitable location could be found. Elias turned to face me fully. Ms. Vance, this isn't just a plot of land, it's a connection. You can't just move that, can it? He gestured across the sprawling garden. Can you relocate the relationship between those bees and these flowers? Can you relocate the taste of a tomato grown in soil that's been nurtured for a decade? Can you relocate the sense of peace people find up here, away from the noise? I felt an unfamiliar sensation, a tightening in my chest. Ow. Or perhaps something more dangerous. Elias stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the scent of damp earth and something clean, like fresh mint. You're wrong, Ms. Vance. Some things aren't business. He was standing so close now I could see the lines around his eyes, etched by sun and laughter. Then you've never met someone who doesn't, he said quietly. I left that rooftop more unsettled than I would ever admit. Driving back to my glass tower, I couldn't shake the image of his earth-colored eyes, the quiet conviction in his voice, the way he looked at me not as a titan of industry, but as someone who had forgotten a fundamental truth. I spent the next week trying to erase Elias Thorne from my mind. I closed a deal in Tokyo, acquired a rival firm, and hosted a fundraiser that netted millions for a cause I barely remembered. But every night, in my sterile penthouse that overlooked the city I commanded, I kept hearing his word. I decided to prove it. The following Wednesday, I returned. This time, I came armed not with platitudes, but with power. Market analyses, relocation proposals, a team of urban planning. I had numbers that could make a saint reconsider his vows. Elias was in the greenhouse, showing a young girl how to pollinate a squash blossom. He looked up when I entered, the city noise muted by the glass panes, and I saw that same quiet fire in his eye. Back for another tour, I wanted to present a formal proposition. He excused himself from the child and walked over, wiping his hands on his jeans. He wore a gray sweater today, the color of a stormy sky that made his eyes seem even deeper. Let me guess. Offer I can't refuse. Precise. I pulled out my tablet, displaying a multimedia presentation my team had worked on for 3 days straight. I've secured a new location, a state-of-the-art rooftop facility, 5 times the size, with automated irrigation and full-spectrum grow lights. And I'm prepared to fund the entire venture, new equipment, a dedicated transport vehicle, and a 10-year operating grant. We're talking about a $5 million investment, Mr. Thorne. For a moment, I thought I had him. A flicker of something in his eyes. Surprise? I felt the familiar rush of an impending victory. Then he did something I never could have predicted. He smiled. Not a mocking smile or a bitter one. A genuine, warm smile that transformed his entire face. Ms. Vance, do you really think this is about efficiency? Everything is about efficiency. Is it? He gestured to the slightly crooked shelves, the mismatched Tell me, what's the value of this girl learning that a flower needs her help to become a fruit? What's the market price of Mrs. Santiago knowing her basil was grown by a neighbor? How much is it worth for this place to feel like it was built by hands, not by a machine? That uncomfortable feeling was back, coiling in my gut. You're being romantic and you're being reductive. Elias stepped closer, and I caught that scent of mint and earth again. Ms. Vance, you think in systems because systems are controllable. They're predictable. Life isn't an algorithm. Communities aren't assets to be liquidated. I'm offering you the chance to help even more people in a sterile, perfect facility with no history, no soul, no connection to the very ground these people walk on, with superior resources. Elias shook his head. You still don't understand. This isn't about producing the maximum number of vegetables. It's about nurturing a connection to our food, to our neighborhood, to each other. Everyone has a price, Mr. Thorne. Then you've never met someone who doesn't. I'm beginning to believe I have. Words escaped before my internal sensor could catch them. Elias's eyes softened for a fraction of a second, and I saw something that made my carefully mortared walls begin to crumble. Understanding, perhaps. Julianne, he said quietly, the first person to use my name without a title in years. What are you really afraid of? The question landed like a punch, aren't you? His voice was gentle, not accusatory. You've built an empire based on control. You own skylines, futures, people's careers. But when was the last time you felt connected to something? When was the last time someone valued you for something other than your net worth? My throat tightened. That's irrelevant. He reached out, his calloused fingers hovering just above my arm before he pulled back. Julianne, you don't need to acquire everything. Some things are meant to be shared. For a moment, standing in that humid greenhouse, surrounded by the scent of living things, I felt a pang of something I hadn't felt since I was a child. Longing, not for another building, another deal, but for the kind of authenticity that couldn't be manufactured or bought. Then my phone chimed. My chief of staff reminded me of a conference call with Zurich. The spell was broken. I was Julianne Vance again, CEO, strategist, the woman in control. I have to go, I said, taking a step back. Of course you do. I was halfway to the door when I looked back. Elias was watching me with an expression that was both sad and knowing. Mr. Thorne, yes, this isn't over. He smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through the greenhouse glass. I never thought it was. I drove back to my office in a trance, his questions echoing in the silent cabin of the Maybach. What was I afraid of? When was the last time I felt connected? I had built my life on being untouchable, unassailable, unburdened by messy emotion. But Elias Thorne was making me want to be touched, to be assailed, to be burdened with something more valuable than profit. He was making me want to belong. Told myself my continued visits to the rooftop farm were purely strategic. Know your enemy. Discover their leverage. That's what I told my board when they questioned the delays on the Tech Campus project was a lie. The truth was, I couldn't stay away from Elias Thorne. It wasn't just his words, though they replayed in my mind during the lonely hours when my penthouse felt less like a palace and more like a beautiful cave. It was the way he moved through that garden, a seamless extension of the life teeming around him. The way neighborhood kids would shout his name from the street below. The way he'd save the best strawberries for Mrs. Santiago. I had forgotten what it looked like for someone to love their work. Not for what it could buy, but for what it was. Thinning out the weaker seedlings with a surgeon's care. Julianne, he said, not looking up. You're early. Am I? I checked my watch. I was, by an hour. My previous meeting had been canceled. He held up a tiny, pale seedling. Sometimes you have to let go of something to let something else thrive. I stood there watching him make these small, crucial decisions, and I felt that now familiar ache in my chest. When was the last time I had nurtured something instead of just acquiring? Do you want to help? Elias asked, shielding his eyes from the sun. I glanced down at my silk blouse, my tailored trousers. I am not exactly dressed for this. Dirt washes off. Regret doesn't. Before I could formulate an excuse, I was kneeling beside him, the rough soil yielding under my hands, feeling the sun on the back of my neck. A young woman with paint-splattered clothes showed me how to tell which seedlings to pull, and for 30 minutes, I forgot about shareholder value and quarterly reports. You're a natural, Elias said as the young woman went to water the herd. I'm a quick study. I brushed the soil from my knees, staining the expensive fabric in a way my dry cleaner would never forgive. Are you? Or do you just remember what it feels like to have your hands in the earth? I looked at him sharp. You don't know the first thing about me. I know you come here every week pretending to assess my weaknesses. I know you watch the kids planting seeds like you're witnessing a miracle. I know you bought out the entire stock of Mrs. Santiago's empanadas last week. When you thought no one was looking, a hot blush crept up my neck. You're mistaken, am I? I stood, brushing the dirt from his own knees. Julianne, why are you really here? The use of my first name was no longer a shock, but an intimacy that both thrilled and terrified me. It was a password to a part of myself I had locked away. I'm trying to understand, I admitted. The truth surprised me as much as it did him. Understand how you can be so certain, how you can stand on this roof in the middle of a concrete jungle I built and act like you're defending paradise. How you can look at me like I'm trailed off, unable to voice the thought, like you're what? Like I'm redeemable. The word hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken history. Elias stepped closer, close enough that I could see the faint scar above his eye, close enough to smell that mint and earth scent that was becoming dangerously, addictively familiar. You are redeemable, Julianne. You're just terrified to let yourself be. I'm not scared, no. Then why do you live in a glass box 75 floors above the rest of the world? Why do you wear ambition like a suit of armor? Why do you acquire companies instead of making friends? Each question was a perfectly aimed arrow, piercing the defenses I had spent a lifetime constructing. Because it's safer. Safer than what? Than feeling? The admission was a whisper, a betrayal of my entire philosophy, than wanting things I can't control. Elias reached out, and this time, his fingers closed around my wrist. His touch was warm, callous, and it sent a jolt through my entire system. What if the things you can't control are the only things worth having? Stared down at his hand on my arm. In my world, I was lauded for my composure, my ability to negotiate billion-dollar deals without a single tell, but standing on this rooftop, with soil on my clothes and this man's hand on my skin, I felt completely transparent. I should go, I said, my voice unsteady. You always should go. This time I mean it. Do you? I met his gaze, those impossible earth-colored eyes that saw everything I tried to hide. Elias, I can't what? Can't be the person you think I am? I don't think you're anyone except lost. He let go of my wrist, giving me back my space. I left the rooftop that day with dirt on my clothes and a tremor in my soul that no amount of money could still. That night, alone in my palace of glass, I looked down at the city I had conquered, and for the first time, I didn't see an empire. I saw a prison. My phone lit up with memos from my legal team, updates on the permit, pressure from the board to finalize the acquisition. Had the power to crush him with the stroke of a pen. Could have the bulldozers there in a week. Instead, I found myself drafting a memo about unexpected zoning complications, about the need for further community impact study. My board was bewildered. My investors were furious. I was falling for a man who represented everything I had spent my life conquering. Inefficiency, the terrifying prospect of caring about something more than the bottom line. And for the first time in my career, I didn't have a plan. The fire broke out on a Tuesday afternoon in August. I was in a meeting on the 40th floor, finalizing a hostile takeover, when the first sirens began to wail in the distance. My chief of staff interrupted, her face pale. "Ms. Van, there's a major fire in the industrial sector near the site of the new campus." I looked up from the documents, a cold dread seeping into my veins. "Which building?" "I'm not sure the specifics, but it's a multi-alarm blaze. Didn't need to finish. It was the building next to his." My mind was moving faster than the words coming out of her mouth, my fingers already flying across my tablet, pulling up live news feeds. Thick black smoke billowing into the sky, flames engulfing the warehouse. And then I saw it. Building next door, his building, with firefighters on the roof spraying water not on the main blaze, but on the greenhouse, on the garden, on his home. I was in my private elevator before I could rationalize the decision. Drive through the cordoned-off streets was a nightmare. I used my name, my influence, my sheer force of will to get past 3 police barricades. My heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a rhythm that had nothing to do with the adrenaline of the situation. I found him on the street below, his face smudged with soot, directing a group of volunteers who were carrying salvaged equipment out of the building's ground floor. He wasn't panicked. He was focused, a calm center in the swirling chaos of smoke and sirens. "Mrs. Santiago, please take the seed bank to the community hall. Marco, can you help Mr. Chen with the water pump?" I stood there on the edge of the chaos, watching him orchestrate a rescue mission for his small, beautiful world with the same authority I wielded in a boardroom, except his assets were people's livelihoods, not share prices. "Julianne." "Surprise, are you doing here?" I walked towards him, my expensive leather shoes scuffing on the ash-strewn pavement. "I heard about the fire. You came all the way down here into this?" I realized I had no logical explanation. Yet sounds of the fire fading into a dull roar. In his eyes, I saw the question he wasn't asking. Not just surprise now, but a dawning understanding. Something that made my chest constrict with an emotion so powerful it stole my breath. "Well," he said, turning back to a volunteer and handing him a crate of tools. "Grab a box. We need to save what we can." For the next 4 hours I worked. I, Julianne Vance, carried boxes of soil, coils of irrigation tubing, and crates of salvage tools. My hands, usually occupied with pens and touchscreens, grew raw and sore. My bespoke suit was coated in a layer of grime and smelled of smoke. I helped a terrified Mrs. Santiago load her car with rescued herbs, and I held a crying child whose father was a volunteer firefighter on the roof. I had never felt more essential in my entire life. The fire was contained by nightfall, but the damage was done. The warehouse next door was a smoldering ruin. His building, while saved from the flames, had suffered severe water and smoke damage. "Structural engineer says the roof is compromised," Elias said as we stood on the street at dawn. The volunteers were gone. It was just us. I had hum of a city waking up. "We're closed indefinitely." His voice was flat, devoid of the life it usually held. "It means the kids from the shelter have nowhere to go this summer. It means the community kitchen has to find another supplier. It means—" He stopped. For the first time, Elias Thorne looked utterly defeated. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice rough. "It's just we were about to harvest the tomatoes. The bees, the hives are gone." Without thinking, my hand found his. Elias, he looked up at me, and in the gray morning light, I saw the full extent of his exhaustion, vulnerability, despair. The very emotions I had engineered my life to avoid. "What if we can't rebuild?" he whispered, the question not meant for me. but for the universe. What if this is the end? Something inside me didn't just crack, shattered. Every defense, every wall, every carefully constructed fortification I had built around my heart turned to dust. You will rebuild, I said, my voice filled with a certainty that came from a place deeper than strategy. I will make sure of it. Julianne, you don't understand. The insurance won't cover an act of arson. We don't have the capital. I'll provide it. The words were out before I had even fully formed the thought. Elias stared at me, his tired eyes searching my face in the dim light. The entire rebuild. A new greenhouse, a new irrigation system, replacing every single thing that was lost. Stepped closer, my hand still holding his. No strings attached, no tech campus, no acquisition. Just let me help. Why? It was the question I had been asking myself for months. Why did I keep coming back? Why did his quiet disapproval matter more than the unanimous approval of my board? Why was I willing to torpedo a $10 billion project for the sake of a few tomato plants and some bees? Because, I said, my other hand coming up to touch his soot-stained cheek. Somewhere in all of this, I stopped wanting to own the block and started wanting to belong on it. Elias's breath hit. Julianne, you were right. Some things aren't business. Some things are just life. And I'm tired of living in a world where everything has a price but nothing has any real value. Space between us crackled with unspoken energy. Elias looked at me as if he were seeing me for the first time, not as the corporate raider or the wealthy adversary, but as the person I had long ago forgotten I could be. Came here today, he said softly. Yes, into the fire. Yes. Why? I looked at the damaged building, at the ruined garden, at the quiet street that was the heart of the community he had built. This man who had single-handedly dismantled every certainty I had about the world. Because this is where you are, I said. And I'm starting to realize that wherever you are is where I need to be. 2 weeks after the fire, I found myself in a position I hadn't been in since my very first business venture. I was afraid. My legal team had drafted the paperwork. A top construction firm was on standby, ready to rebuild the rooftop farm and the damaged building, reinforcing it with materials and technology that would make it a beacon of urban agriculture. But my board of directors was in open rebellion. Leanne, have you lost your mind? Harold Chen, my most senior board member, was apoplectic. With no return on investment, it's the right thing to do. Since when is this a non-profit? He shot back. Since when do we make decisions based on sentiment instead of shareholder value? I started caring more about the color of a man's eyes than the color of my balance sheet, I thought, but did not say. The investors are threatening a class action lawsuit. The City Planning Commission is questioning your stability. You are jeopardizing the entire Vance empire. The irony was palpable. I was jeopardizing the empire I had built for something that couldn't be bought or sold. Connection, purpose, the possibility of a different kind of life. After the meeting, which felt more like an interrogation, I sat alone in my office, the city lights beginning to sparkle below. Each light represented a deal, a victory, a testament to my power. But tonight, they felt like distant, cold stars, and I was utterly alone in the darkness. My phone vibrated. A text from Elias. Mrs. Santiago wanted me to thank you. She cried when she saw the plans for the new kitchen. I stared at the message, a warmth spreading through my chest that had nothing to do with the climate control of my office. When was the last time anyone had thanked me for something that didn't directly profit me? My car, usually directed by a chauffeur, seemed to find its own way. Drawn by a gravitational pull I could no longer deny. The building was dark, a skeleton surrounded by scaffolding, except for a single light coming from a temporary office trailer set up across the street. Elias was hunched over a set of blueprints, a pencil tucked behind his ear. "It's open," if you need a place to rest. It struck me then that this was exactly what I needed. Rest. Not from work, but from the crushing weight of the life I had built. Elias, it's Julianne. His expression softened instantly. Come in. The kettle just boiled. The trailer was cramped, filled with rolled-up plans and boxes of salvaged seed. Children's drawings of the future garden were taped to the wall. It was the complete antithesis of my meticulously designed minimalist office, and it felt more real than any space I had occupied in years. Elias handed me a steaming mug. It was chipped, hard half. My board is calling for an emergency vote to have me removed. My top investors are staging a coup. I might lose control of my own company, all because I wanted to help you. The admission hung in the air between us. Elias set down his mug and looked at me with that impossibly kind gaze. Julianne, you don't have to destroy your life for us. Stood up, the need to move suddenly overwhelming. Do you have any idea what my life was before I met you? It was a series of transactions. I owned a city, but I didn't have a single neighbor. I had infinite resources, but no wealth, real, messy, human connection. I turned to face him, the words pouring out of me, a floodgate breaking after years of drought. Elias, I have spent my entire adult life constructing a fortress around my heart. I built it so high no one could get in. And then you, with your stupid vegetables and your quiet certainty, you just walked right through the gate. You didn't even notice the wall. You saw through every defense, every pretense, every lie I told myself about what it meant to be strong. You looked at me like I was a person, not a portfolio. Elias stood up, closing the small distance between us. Person, not in my world. In my world, empathy is a weakness, kindness is a liability, love is... I stopped, the word catching in my throat. Love is something I decided was a luxury I couldn't afford a long time ago. And now I looked at this man who had completely upended my universe with his simple, unwavering belief in things that couldn't be quantified. Now I think I've been living in the wrong world. Elias stepped closer still, so close I could feel the warmth radiating from him, so close I could see the flecks of green in his earth-colored eyes. Julianne, he said softly, what are you saying? I'm saying that for the first time in my life, I care more about someone else's harvest than my own bottom line. Confession felt like stepping off a cliff into thin air. I'm saying that I would rather lose an empire than lose the possibility of being part of it. Part of what? This community, this this world you're building where things grow, where people matter more than profits, where kindness isn't a strategy, it's a way of life. Elias reached out and cupped my face in his hands, his palms rough and warm against my skin. You want to be a part of that? I want to be a part of anything that has you. The words were a raw, terrifying and liberating truth. I had spent a lifetime never showing my cards, and now I had just laid my entire hand on the table. I might lose everything, I whispered. Or, he said, his thumbs gently stroking my cheek, you might finally gain everything that matters. The call came at dawn. Harold Chen's voice was like ice. Emergency session, 9 a.m., don't be late. This was it. The coup. When I walked into the boardroom, the tension was a physical force. 12 of my 13 board members were seated, their faces a mixture of grim determination and nervous avoidance. The empty chair at the head of the table, my throne, felt miles away. Julianne, Harold began, dispensing with any formality, we are calling for a vote of no confidence. I sat down, my movements deliberate, my hands steady, even as an earthquake was tearing through my professional life. On what grounds? Gross mismanagement of corporate assets. You mean the rooftop farm? I mean $7 million of shareholder money being diverted to a personal charity project. I mean the indefinite suspension of a $10 billion camp for reasons you refuse to articulate rationally. I mean a CEO who has forgotten that her sole duty is to generate profit, not goodwill. Around the table, men and women I had mentored, whose careers I had made, stared at their note. These were the people who had applauded my ruthlessness when it fattened their dividends, who had praised my detachment when it led to record-breaking quarter. I said calmly, "It's being re-envisioned. It's being scuttled," snapped Patricia Vey, my CFO. She slid a binder across the polished mahogany. "These are the revised projections based on your re-envisioning, a 90% reduction in profit margins compared to the original plan. Some things are worth more than profit margin." Harold's challenge hung in a silent, air-conditioned room. "Community," I said. "Belonging. The knowledge that what you build contributes to human flourishing instead of just shareholder wealth." Harold laughed, a dry, joyless sound. "Listen to yourself. You sound like some starry-eyed activist, not the sharpest CEO this city has ever seen." "Maybe I do. You're the one who taught me that emotion is a cancer in business. You used to say that caring about individuals over market trends was a fatal flaw. I was wrong. Are you?" he pressed, his eyes narrowing. "Or are you allowing a personal entanglement to compromise your judgment?" The accusation was meant to sting, and it did, but only because it was a partial truth. My feelings for Elias had changed everything, but they hadn't compromised my judgment. They had clarified it. My judgment is that we have been measuring success by the wrong metric. My judgment is that building an empire on the displacement of others isn't success. It's a form of moral bankruptcy. "It's business," someone muttered. "Then maybe I don't want to be in this business anymore." The silence that followed was absent. Patricia's pen froze mid-stroke. Harold's mouth hung slightly open. For a full minute, the only sound was the faint whir of the building's ventilation system. "You don't mean that," Harold said finally, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Don't I?" "Julianne," Patricia said, her voice cautious, "you have created something monumental here. Don't throw it all away. For what?" Words came out with more force than I intended. "For the chance to build something that actually matters. For someone who has nothing to offer me except everything I've been missing." I walked to the vast window that overlooked the city, my city. From this height, the people were invisible, the neighborhoods just abstract shapes. It was a perfect metaphor for how I had lived, detached, observing from a distance, moving pieces on a board without ever touching them. "I built this company on the belief that everything has a price," I said, my back to them. "But I met someone who taught me that the most valuable things can't be bought. They have to be grown." Harold's voice was laced with contempt. "No," I said, turning to face them one last time. "I think he's my partner in building something real." I walked back to the table, leaving my tablet and security badge behind. Vote of no confidence is unnecessary. I am resigning as CEO, effective immediately. A chorus of protests and questions erupted, but I was already walking toward the door. "Community rebuild will proceed," I announced, "funded by my personal assets, not corporate ones. The rest of you can figure out how to maximize profit. I'm going to figure out how to live a life." In the elevator ride down, I felt a strange and exhilarating lightness. The weight of an empire I didn't realize I'd been carrying had been lifted. I drove myself, not in the Maybach, but in a simple sedan I kept for anonymity, straight to the construction site. Elias was there, talking with an architect, his hand shaping the air as he described his vision for the new greenhouse. He looked up as I approached, and the smile that lit up his face was worth more than every stock option I had just forfeited. "Julianne," he said, walking to me, "shouldn't you be at a board meeting?" I quit. His smile wavered, replaced by concern. "You what?" I resigned, walked away, chose the path of most resistance. I couldn't stop the grin from spreading across my face, and I've never felt so free. Months later, I woke up in a small apartment above a bookstore to the sound of a city that was no longer just a market to me, but a neighborhood. My coffee mug was chipped, my kitchen table was made of reclaimed wood, and my closet was filled with more denim than silk. I had never been richer. Phoenix Garden, as a community had named it, opened 3 months after I left my old life behind. It was a marvel of sustainable urban agriculture, everything Elias had dreamed of and more. A state-of-the-art greenhouse, commercial kitchen for community cooking classes, an expanded apiary, and an educational center for local schools. But the real transformation was in the intangible. The garden had become the heart of the neighborhood, a place where people gathered not just for food, but for solace and connection. Mrs. Santiago taught pickling classes. Teenagers who had been on the verge of dropping out were now learning about botany and business management. I had found my place there, starting with the one skill I knew I could offer: fundraising. Grant proposals, it turned out, were not so different from investor prospectuses. My old network of contacts, initially bewildered by my life change, proved surprisingly useful. Gradually, my role evolved. I became the garden's director of operations, handling the logistics, the budgets, the expansion plans, freeing Elias to do what he did best: nurture life. The pay was a tiny fraction of my former salary, and the work was the most rewarding I had ever done. This particular Tuesday morning, I was in the educational center with a group of 5th graders, teaching them about the symbiotic relationship between bees and flowers. I was using a model I had built myself, my hands, once soft from a life of delegation, now calloused and capable. "Ms. Julianne, look!" A little girl named Maya cried out, pointing to the observation hive. "The Queen! I see the Queen!" The genuine wonder in her voice was a dividend more valuable than any I had ever received. The garden had taught me that true power wasn't about control. It was about cultivation. "Julianne," Elias's voice called from the doorway, "can I steal you for a minute?" I left the kids with their teacher and followed him outside into the warm sunlight. He led me to his favorite spot, a simple wooden bench surrounded by lavender and buzzing with happy bees. "I have some news," he said, his eyes sparkling with an excitement he couldn't contain. "Good news, or we have a pest problem news?" "Very good news." He took my hands in his. "The City Council just approved our proposal. The Phoenix project is going citywide. They're giving us 3 more abandoned lots to transform, full funding." I felt a surge of pride so intense it almost brought me to tears. Pride for him, for this incredible thing he had built from a single seed of an idea. "Elias, that's astonishing. You did it." "We did it," he corrected, his thumb stroking the back of my hand. "I couldn't have navigated that bureaucracy without you. I would have given up after the 3rd zoning variance request." He smiled. "We're a good team." "We are?" We had been dancing around the evolution of our relationship for months. The late-night talks over mugs of tea, the easy companionship of working side by side, the electric current that passed between us every time our hands brushed while examining a leaf. "Julianne," Elias said, his voice becoming more serious, "there's something else. What is it?" Instead of answering, he reached into his back pocket and pulled out a crisp, expensive-looking envelope. "This came for you. A courier delivered it this morning." I recognized the letterhead instantly. "My old firm." Probably a final settlement notice or a legal threat from Harold. "Aren't you going to open it?" he asked gently. I looked at the envelope, a ghost from a past life. Then I looked at Elias. at his kind, patient face, at the vibrant garden around us, a world away from the cold glass and steel that letter represented. "You know what?" I said, taking the envelope from him. "I don't care what it says." "You don't?" "Whatever's in here," I said, tearing it in half, then in half again, "is about a life I don't live anymore. A world where value was measured in dollars instead of the difference you make in a single person's day." I let the pieces fall into the mulch at the base of a rosemary bush. "This is my world now. You are my world." Elias's smile was blinding. "Is that your way of saying you're putting down roots?" "It's my way of saying I'm already home." He moved closer then, closing the small space between us on the bench. His familiar scent of earth and mint filled my senses. "Julianne Vance," he said softly, "for a woman who used to acquire everything in sight, you turned out to be remarkably good at letting things go." "What did I let go of?" "An empire," he said, his hand coming up to cup my cheek. "A fortress. A lifetime of believing you were alone." "Those weren't sacrifices," I said, leaning into his touch. "They were the price of admission to get something I could never have bought. This, you, the chance to wake up in the morning and feel like I'm a part of something that grows." Elias leaned in, his eyes full of a love that I now knew was the most valuable asset in the universe. "I love you," he whispered, the words I had once considered a liability, a weakness, a luxury I couldn't afford. But standing here in the heart of the world we had built together, they didn't feel like a risk anymore. They felt like a harvest. "I love you too," I said, and then I kissed him. It was a kiss that tasted of sunlight and honey and second chances, a kiss that sealed a merger not of companies, but of souls. When we finally broke apart, Elias was beaming, that world-changing smile that had brought my walls crumbling down. "So," he said, his voice full of joyful energy, "ready to go build a forest in the middle of a city?" I looked around at the garden, at the children laughing, at the bees dancing, at the man I loved. "With you, I'm ready for anything."